Well, in other news now, the U.S. military spending in 2012 has been higher than the combined expenditure of 10 other big spenders in the same field. A Swedish-based Peace Research Institute says the U.S. remained the world's largest spender with $682 billion. This puts the U.S. far above China, Canada, Australia, and several European countries. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, Cyprus, says the global military spending dipped slightly in 2012. The institute estimated that global military expenditure totaled $1.75 trillion in 2012. The new figures show that despite the fall, global military spending is still higher in real terms than its peak at the end of the Cold War. Well, joining us now from San Francisco via Skype is a former U.S. Senator Mike Gravel. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV. Now, looking at the figures that have been presented, it seems that the world, specifically the U.S., hasn't come very far off after the Cold War era now, has it?
Not at all. In fact, these figures are not surprising. Syria does a very good job monitoring weaponry around the world. But this is normally the case. The United States is far, far in excess in producing weapons of any other country in the world. The figure that I've seen in some cases is that the United States produces more weapons than all the rest of the world put together. And that's a figure that's even higher than what Syria represents, which is of the number of nations that we exceed. It must be added that in the arms bazaar of the world, the United States places more weapons into that bazaar than any other nation in the world, and has for quite a number of years.
Well, speaking of which, considering so much money is being spent on the weapons by the U.S., do you think that the American military-industrial complex does form a large chunk of the American economy and therefore does translate into some very dangerous policies on the ground?
No question. In fact, you must go further than that. The American involvement with NATO is nothing more than the globalization of the arms industry, or the expansion of the power of the military-industrial complex, the globalization of it all led by the United States. This is a policy that's ingrained and also has strong economic ties. You have to appreciate that the military production of weapons takes place in probably every congressional district of the members of Congress in the United States. And so it becomes an issue of employment. If you were to cut back on this trade in weapons, you'd be having to cut back on employment. And that, of course, just compounds the economic problem that we find ourselves in since the debacle of 09 and 10.
Right, so then where does this leave hopes for peace and stability in the world when you have governments, heavyweight governments like the United States, spending millions of dollars, billions rather, on military expenditure and then making profits by selling them to irresponsible partners and players?
Well, where does it leave us? I don't know. I don't have any magic answer for that. I think it's just very discouraging that the superpower of the world is the one that's leading this trade activity of weapons internationally. The only thing I can think of is that we have to find a way to empower the people to be able to make laws directly, and the government won't solve the problem, so we have to turn to the people to bring about a solution.
Discouraging indeed. We're going to have to leave it there. Former U.S. Senator Mike Gravel there joining us via Skype from San Francisco. Many thanks indeed, Senator, for your comments here on Press TV.